My name is Sheila. I am 58 years old. For 5 years after my husband passed away, I raised my only son alone. I believed he would always love me. I believed I would be welcomed into his new family. Then one evening, he stood before me and gave me two choices: serve his fiancée or leave quietly. I smiled, grabbed my suitcase, and walked out. Before I continue, tell me where you are watching from. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever chosen dignity over family. Let me take you back to where it all began. My husband Frank was the love of my life. We met when I was 23 years old, working my first job as a nurse at a small clinic in Philadelphia. He came in one afternoon with a nasty cut on his hand from a job site. He was an electrician, strong hands, gentle eyes, and a smile that made me forget I was supposed to be professional. We were married within a year. 28 years we had together. 28 years of building a life, raising our son, and dreaming about the future. Frank was not a wealthy man. He worked hard, came home tired, but he never once made me feel like we were lacking anything. Our little house in the suburbs was not fancy. The roof leaked sometimes. The furnace made strange noises in winter. But it was ours. Every corner held a memory. Every room echoed with laughter we had shared. Then 5 years ago, Frank collapsed at a job site. A heart attack, they told me. By the time the ambulance arrived, he was gone. Just like that. One morning, he kissed me goodbye, and by afternoon, I was a widow. I thought I would not survive that loss. The grief was like drowning in an ocean with no shore in sight. But I had Derek, my son. He was 26, then fresh out of law school, just starting his career. He held me at the funeral and whispered in my ear, "Mom, I will take care of you. You will never be alone." Those words kept me going. Derek had always been a good boy. From the time he was small, he was the kind of child who made parenting feel like a blessing. He helped around the house without being asked. When he was in high school, he got a part-time job at the grocery store so he would have his own spending money. He did not want to burden us, he said. Frank and I were so proud of him. He studied hard, earned a scholarship to a prestigious law school, and graduated near the top of his class. When Frank passed, Derek stepped up. He visited me every week. He would bring groceries, fix things around the house, sit with me in the evening, and talk about nothing and everything. Those visits were my lifeline. I retired early 3 years ago after a minor surgery. 30 years as a nurse takes a toll on your body. I did not mind. I had my little house, my garden, my quiet routines. And I had Derek, who I believed would always be there. Then 2 years ago, everything started to change. Derek called me one evening, his voice bubbling with excitement. "Mom, I met someone. Her name is Kristen. She is amazing." I was happy for him. Of course I was. Every mother wants her child to find love. He arranged for us to meet at a restaurant downtown. A fancy place with white tablecloths and waiters in black vests. Not the kind of place I usually went to, but I dressed up nicely and tried to make a good impression. Kristen was beautiful. There was no denying that. She had the kind of polished look that comes from expensive haircuts and designer clothes. She smiled when Derek introduced us, but her eyes did not match her smile. They moved over me quickly, assessing, calculating. I felt like a piece of furniture being evaluated for whether it belonged in the room. She asked me questions in a tone that felt more like an interview than a conversation. What did I do for work? Oh, a nurse. How nice. Where did I live? The suburbs. That must be quiet out there, far from everything. I tried to brush off my discomfort. Maybe she was nervous. Maybe I was being too sensitive. But when I looked at Derek, hoping for some reassurance, he was gazing at Kristen like she hung the moon. He did not seem to notice anything wrong. After that dinner, Derek's weekly visits became monthly, then every other month. He was busy, he said. Kristen needed him. They were building a life together. I understood. I told myself I understood. But late at night alone in the house where I had spent my entire marriage, I could not shake the feeling that I was losing my son. Not to death like I had lost Frank, but to something else. Something that smiled with cold eyes and asked pointed questions about where I lived. I kept telling myself things would get better once they settled into their relationship. Once they got engaged. Once they got married. Surely then I would be welcomed into their family. Surely then Derek would remember the mother who had sacrificed everything for him. I had no idea how wrong I was. 6 months before everything fell apart, Derek invited me to dinner at Kristen's family's home. I was nervous, but hopeful. This was my chance to get to know her family, to show them that I could fit in, that I was worthy of being part of their world. Kristen's family lived in a penthouse apartment in the heart of the city. When I stepped off the elevator, I felt like I had entered another universe. The floors were marble. The furniture looked like it belonged in a magazine. Everything gleamed under soft, expensive lighting. Her mother, Evelyn, greeted me at the door. She was in her early 60s, with silver hair swept back elegantly and diamonds at her ears that probably cost more than my car. She extended her hand like she was granting me an audience. "So, you are Derek's mother," she said. "A nurse, right? That must be such demanding work." The way she said it made demanding sound like dirty. Her father was away on business traveling somewhere in Europe. Throughout dinner, Evelyn dominated the conversation. She talked about their vacation home in the Hamptons, their trips to Paris, the charity galas they attended. Kristen chimed in occasionally, always in agreement with her mother. I sat there unsure what to contribute when I tried to mention something about my years at the hospital. Evelyn cut me off with a polite smile and changed the subject. The worst moment came during the main course. I picked up the wrong fork. It was a small thing, an honest mistake. But I caught Kristen and Evelyn exchanging a look. A quick glance, a tiny smirk. They thought I did not see, but I did. I looked at Derek, hoping he would say something. Anything. But he just kept eating, pretending nothing had happened. On the drive home that night, I sat alone in my car in the driveway for a long time. I told myself I was overreacting. Rich people had different manners, different customs. It did not mean they looked down on me. But deep inside, I knew what I had seen in those exchanged glances. I just was not ready to admit it. A month later, Derek called me with a strange request. He asked if I had ever thought about selling my house and moving somewhere smaller. I was stunned. This house. The house your father and I built our life in? Derek sighed. Kristen and I have been talking. If we have kids someday, it would be hard for them to visit you all the way out in the suburbs. Maybe something closer to the city would make more sense. I held the phone tightly, my heart aching. This house was where Derek took his first steps, where Frank taught him to ride a bicycle in the backyard, where we celebrated every Christmas, every birthday, every milestone. I will think about it, I said. But I knew I would never sell. 2 months before everything came crashing down, Derek and Kristen came to visit me with big news. They were engaged. The wedding would be in 5 months. I hugged Derek and tried to feel happy. "Congratulations," I said. "I am so happy for you both." Then Kristen spoke up. "We have been thinking," she said. "It might make sense for you to move in with us after the wedding. That way, you would not be alone out here." For a moment, my heart lifted. Maybe I had misjudged her. Maybe she did want me to be part of their family. Then she continued, "Our new apartment has a small room behind the kitchen. It is not very big, but it would be perfect for you. And of course, if you sold this house, you could contribute to the household expenses." The room behind the kitchen. Not a guest room. Not a mother-in-law suite. A small room behind the kitchen, like quarters for the help. I looked at Derek, waiting for him to say something. To object. To offer me a proper room at least. He said nothing. "I need some time to think about it," I managed to say. Kristen's face tightened with displeasure, but she did not push further. That night, I called my sister Margaret in Arizona. She listened to everything I told her, and when I finished, she did not hold back. "Sheila, do you hear yourself? A room behind the kitchen, selling your house to contribute to their expenses. They are not inviting you to live with them. They want a live-in housekeeper who pays for the privilege." I wanted to argue with her. I wanted to defend Derek. But I could not find the words because I knew she was right. Still, I held on to hope. Maybe things would be different once the wedding was over. Maybe Kristen would soften. Maybe Derek would remember who I was and what I meant to him. I kept hoping, even when all the signs told me to stop. 1 month before the night that changed everything, Kristen invited me to go wedding dress shopping with her. I was surprised and cautiously optimistic. Maybe this was her way of reaching out. Maybe she wanted to bond. I drove downtown to the bridal boutique she had chosen. It was the kind of place where the dresses cost more than my annual pension. When I walked in, I saw Evelyn was already there along with 2 of her friends, women dripping in jewelry and condescension. Kristen emerged from the dressing room in a stunning white gown. She looked like a princess from a fairy tale. I told her so. "You look absolutely beautiful," I said. "Derek is a lucky man." Before Kristen could respond, Evelyn spoke up. She looked me up and down and said, "I imagine you do not get to visit places like this very often, do you?" Her friends laughed softly. I felt my face flush. I glanced at Kristen, waiting for her to say something, to defend me, to tell her mother that was rude. Instead, Kristen laughed along with them. I excused myself and went to sit in the waiting area. For the next hour, I watched through the window as they tried on dresses and sipped champagne and made jokes I could not hear but could easily imagine. When we left, Kristen did not mention what had happened. She talked about the dresses, the alterations, the wedding plans. As if nothing was wrong. As if I had not just been humiliated in front of strangers. 2 weeks later, Derek sent me an email. The subject line read, "Some things to prepare." I opened it and found a list. A detailed list of rules and responsibilities for when I moved in with them. Daily cleaning of the apartment, cooking according to menus Kristen would provide. No entertaining guests when they were not home. No using the living room when Kristen had visitors. Always dressing neatly, no loungewear outside my room. I read it 3 times, certain I was misunderstanding. This was not an invitation to join their family. This was a job description for an unpaid servant. I called Derek immediately. "What is this?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He sounded impatient. "Kristen just wants things to be organized, Mom. It is not personal." "Did you read this list, Derek? Did you actually read it?" He paused. "Mom, you are overthinking this. Just try to go along with it. For me, for him. Everything was always for him. But when had he done anything for me?" I hung up and sat at my kitchen table staring at the email on my phone. Something inside me was crumbling. Not my love for Derek. That would never die. But my hope. My belief that things would somehow work out. That was falling apart, piece by piece. A few days later, I met Thomas for coffee. He was an old colleague from the hospital, a doctor I had worked with for 20 years. We had stayed in touch after I retired, meeting occasionally to catch up. I told him everything, about Kristen, about the list, about the room behind the kitchen. Thomas listened without interrupting. When I finished, he shook his head slowly. "Sheila, I have known you for 2 decades. You are one of the strongest people I have ever met. You ran that emergency room like a general. You saved lives. You commanded respect from everyone who worked with you. Do not let anyone turn you into a servant." I told him I was afraid of losing Derek. He looked at me with sad eyes. "But are you really keeping him? If you accept this, Are you keeping your son? Or are you just keeping a stranger who looks like him? That question haunted me for days. I went home that evening and pulled out an old suitcase from the closet. Frank had bought it for me years ago for our 20th anniversary trip. I had not used it since he died. I set it on the bed and looked at it for a long time. I did not know what I was going to do with it yet, but I knew I needed to be ready. Ready for something I had been avoiding for too long. 1 week before I walked out with that suitcase, Derek called and asked me to come to dinner at his and Kristen's new apartment. He said there was something important they needed to discuss. I agreed, though my stomach was tight with anxiety. Part of me still hoped this would be the conversation where everything changed, where Derek apologized, where Kristen showed some warmth, where they told me they wanted me in their lives as a mother, not as a maid. I packed a small overnight bag, thinking maybe I would stay the night if things went well. The same suitcase Frank had given me. I drove into the city as the sun was setting, watching the skyline grow larger through my windshield. Their apartment was on the 32nd floor of a luxury building. The doorman called up to announce me. The elevator was silent and fast. When the doors opened, Derek was waiting in the hallway. He looked tired. There were shadows under his eyes I had not noticed before. But his jaw was set in a way that told me this was not going to be the conversation I had hoped for. The apartment was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city lights. Furniture that looked like it cost more than everything I owned. But there was no warmth in it. No photographs on the walls. No signs that real people lived here. Kristen was sitting on a white leather sofa. Her legs crossed, her posture perfect. She looked like a queen on her throne. There was no dinner prepared, no plates set out. This was not a social visit. "Sit down, Mom," Derek said. "We need to talk." I sat in a chair across from them, my small suitcase beside me. Derek cleared his throat. "We have been discussing your living situation. The offer to move in with us still stands, but Kristen has some concerns we need to address." Kristen took over, her voice cool and businesslike. "If you are going to live here, we need to establish clear expectations. This is our home, our rules. I have put together a more detailed outline of responsibilities." She handed me a printed document. It was longer than the email, more specific. Wake-up times, cleaning schedules, meal preparation requirements, a list of behaviors that were not acceptable in their home. I looked at the papers in my hands. Words blurred together. My hands were shaking. I looked up at Derek. "You agree with all of this?" He would not meet my eyes. "It is the best solution for everyone," he said. "The best solution," I repeated. "You want me to be a servant in your home, to cook and clean and stay invisible when it is convenient for you. That is your best solution." Kristen's eyes narrowed. "You are being dramatic. This is about contribution. Everyone in a household should contribute." "I contribute," I said, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. "I spent 30 years as a nurse. I raised this man sitting next to you. I sacrificed everything for him. And now you want me to earn my place by scrubbing your floors?" Derek finally looked at me. His face was hard, like a stranger's. "Mom, you are making this difficult. We are trying to help you." "Help me." He stood up, frustration in every line of his body. "You have two choices," he said. "You can accept this arrangement and live with us contributing to the household. Or you can leave quietly, and we will not have anything more to discuss." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Two choices. Serve or leave. From my own son. The baby I had held in my arms. The boy I had read bedtime stories to. The young man I had worked double shifts to put through school. Something broke inside me in that moment, but it was not my spirit. It was the last thread of denial I had been clinging to. The hope that had kept me making excuses, overlooking insults, pretending everything would be fine. I looked at Derek, then at Kristen, then at the papers in my hands. I set the papers down on the coffee table, and I smiled. Not a bitter smile, not an angry smile, a genuine smile of clarity, of freedom. I understand, I said calmly. I stood up and picked up my suitcase. The same suitcase I had brought thinking I might stay. Now it was carrying me away. Derek looked confused. "Mom, what are you doing? I am choosing my dignity," I said. "I am choosing to remain your mother, not your maid. And if that means walking out this door, then that is what I will do." Kristen's face registered shock. She had not expected this. She thought I would cry. "Beg, give in." I walked to the door. Derek called after me. "Mom, you are being ridiculous. Think about what you are doing." I stopped with my hand on the doorknob. I turned back one last time. "I have thought about it," I said. "For months I have thought about it. And I have realized that loving you does not mean I have to lose myself. Goodbye, Derek." I opened the door and walked out. The elevator ride down felt like it took forever and no time at all. When I stepped out into the night air, I took a deep breath. The city lights blurred through my tears, but I was not sobbing. I was breathing. Really breathing. For the first time in months. I drove home through dark streets, my suitcase on the passenger seat beside me. When I pulled into my driveway, I sat in the car for a long time, looking at my little house. The house Frank and I had built our life in. The house that held every memory that mattered. I went inside, closed the door, and sat down in Frank's old armchair. The one he used to read his newspaper in every evening. "Did I do the right thing?" I whispered into the empty room. The silence was my answer. But it was not a cold silence. It felt like permission, like Frank was telling me he was proud. I fell asleep right there in the chair, my suitcase beside me, a strange peace settling over my heart. The next morning, my phone started ringing at 7 o'clock. Derek called 5 times. I did not answer. Text messages poured in. "You are overreacting, Mom. Kristen is upset. You owe her an apology for walking out like that." I read the messages. I did not respond. Then Evelyn called. I almost did not answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Her voice was dripping with false concern. "Sheila, I heard about last night. I really think you should reconsider. Derek is your only son. Do you really want to throw that away over a misunderstanding?" I kept my voice calm and steady. "Thank you for your concern, Evelyn. But this is between me and my son." I hung up before she could respond. Then I turned off my phone and went to make myself breakfast. 2 days later, Margaret arrived at my doorstep without warning. She had flown in from Arizona the moment I told her what happened. She hugged me tight. "You did good, little sister. You did so good." We sat up late into the night talking. Margaret told me about her own struggles with her daughter-in-law years ago, how she had bent over backward trying to please everyone until she realized she was disappearing, how she finally learned to stand up for herself even though it cost her years of estrangement before things healed. "Loving your children does not mean letting them walk all over you," she said. "Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is show them there are consequences to their actions." She was right. I had spent so long trying to hold on to Derek that I had forgotten to hold on to myself. After Margaret left, I started rebuilding my life. I called Thomas, and asked about opportunities at the community clinic he had mentioned. He was thrilled. Within a week, I was working part-time helping patients who reminded me why I had become a nurse in the first place. I signed up for a painting class at the community center. Something I had always wanted to do but never had time for. The first time I put brush to canvas, I felt something stir inside me that had been dormant for years. My neighbor Rosa came by one afternoon with a homemade cake. She was a warm woman with kind eyes, originally from Puerto Rico. We had waved to each other for years, but never really talked. That afternoon, we talked for hours. Rosa became a friend. We started walking together in the mornings, sharing stories, laughing at things that were not even that funny. She introduced me to her book club. Suddenly, I had a social life again. The pain was still there. Missing Derek was a constant ache. But the pain was not destroying me anymore. I was living around it, through it, despite it. A month after I walked out, I received a wedding invitation in the mail. My name was printed at the very bottom of the guest list, after every member of Kristen's family. I looked at the invitation for a long time. Then I put it in a drawer and went for a walk with Rosa. I had not decided yet whether I would go, and for the first time, that felt okay. I did not have to decide on anyone else's timeline. I could choose for myself. 3 weeks before the wedding, Derek showed up at my house unannounced. I was in the garden when I heard a car pull up. I turned and saw him getting out, looking thinner than the last time I had seen him. There were dark circles under his eyes. He came alone. No Kristen. "Mom," he said, "can we talk?" I stood up, brushing dirt off my gloves. I nodded toward the front door. We sat in the living room, the same room where he had taken his first steps, where we had celebrated his graduations, where Frank had taught him to play chess. Derek did not waste time on small talk. He started with complaints. "Why have you not been answering my calls? Do you know how embarrassing this is? Everyone is asking why my mother is not involved in the wedding." I listened without interrupting. He continued, "You need to apologize to Kristen. She has been stressed about this whole situation. The wedding is almost here and you are making everything difficult." I waited until he was finished. Then I spoke. "Derek, I'm going to tell you some things I should have said a long time ago." I told him about the bridal boutique, about Evelyn's insults, about Kristen laughing along instead of defending me. I told him about the list of rules, the room behind the kitchen, the expectation that I would sell my home and pay for the privilege of being their maid. I told him about the exchange of glances at that first dinner when I used the wrong fork, about feeling like an outsider in every interaction with Kristen's family, about the loneliness of watching my son slip away into a world that had no place for me. Derek listened. His face changed as I spoke. Some of the hardness melted away, replaced by something that looked like confusion, maybe shame. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. I did not know, he finally said. "About the boutique, about the things Mom said." I looked at him. "Did you not know? Or did you not want to see?" He did not have an answer. I continued. "I love you, Derek. That has not changed. It never will. But I cannot love you by hating myself. I cannot be part of your life if being part of your life means being treated like I am, less than human." He started to speak, but I held up my hand. "When you are ready to have a relationship with me, based on mutual respect, I will be here. But I will not beg for a place in your life, and I will never be anyone's servant." He sat there looking at his hands. Then he stood up and walked toward the door. I thought he would leave without saying anything, but at the door, he stopped. "I need to think," he said quietly. I nodded. "That is all I ask." He left. I did not cry after he was gone. I felt something else instead. Something like hope, but quieter. like a small seed planted in dry soil waiting for rain. The wedding came 2 weeks later. I did not attend. Instead, I sent Derek a letter. Not through Kristen. I mailed it to his office addressed only to him. I wish you happiness, I wrote. I love you more than you will ever know. But I need to be respected as your mother, not tolerated as a burden. When you understand that, call me. I will always be here. On the day of the wedding, I went to the art museum with Rosa. We spent hours looking at paintings, talking about beauty and loss and resilience. That evening, I cooked myself a nice dinner and went to bed early. When I saw the wedding photos on social media the next day, I noticed Derek's smile. It was the same smile he had always worn for pictures. But his eyes looked empty, like he was already wondering if he had made a mistake. I did not reach out. That was not my job anymore. He had to find his own way back. And while I waited, I would keep living. Not waiting for permission. Not shrinking myself to fit someone else's expectations. Just living. 6 months passed after the wedding. Life had taken on a new rhythm. I worked at the clinic 3 days a week. Patients knew me by name. They brought me homemade cookies and told me their stories. One elderly man told me I reminded him of his late wife. The kindest woman I ever knew, he said. I carry that compliment with me still. My painting improved. I finished a landscape of the countryside outside Philadelphia, the hills rolling green under a summer sky. I hung it in my living room, right above Frank's chair. Every time I looked at it, I felt proud. Not of the painting itself, but of the fact that I had made something beautiful in a season of pain. Margaret and I planned a trip together. A week in San Diego, our first real vacation in years. We rented a little cottage near the beach and spent our days walking along the shore, eating too much seafood and laughing at old memories. Rosa and I started a small vegetable garden together, half in her yard, half in mine. Tomatoes, peppers, zucchini. Watching things grow reminded me that life continues even after loss. I was not waiting for Derek anymore. I was living. But I thought about him every day, wondering if he was happy, wondering if he ever thought about our conversation, wondering if I would ever hear from him again. Then one evening in late spring, my phone rang. It was Derek. "Mom," he said. His voice sounded different, tired but also softer. "Can I see you?" We met at the park near my house, the same park where I used to take him when he was small, where he learned to swing by himself, where Frank taught him to throw a football. He looked thinner than before. The confidence he had always carried seemed diminished, replaced by something more vulnerable. We sat on a bench overlooking the playground. Children were laughing in the distance. Derek spoke first. "Things have been hard," he said. "The marriage is not what I thought it would be." I waited. Kristen's family is always involved in everything. Every decision, every argument. He paused. "I started to understand how you must have felt. Being judged. Being dismissed." I still did not speak. He turned to look at me. "I am not here to apologize with words, Mom. Words are easy. I am here because I want to do better. I want to try." I looked at my son, the little boy who used to run into my arms, the teenager who made me laugh with his terrible jokes, the young man who had promised to take care of me. He was still in there somewhere, buried under years of distance and bad choices, but still there. "Can we start over?" he asked. I shook my head slowly. "We cannot go back, Derek. Too much has happened." His face fell. But I continued, "We can start again." New, with honesty, with respect, with the understanding that I am your mother and I deserve to be treated as such. He nodded. I want that. Then earn it, I said gently. Show me with your actions, not just your words. He did not argue. He did not make excuses. He just nodded again. When we stood up to leave, he hugged me. It was the first real hug he had given me in years. Not an obligation, not a formality, a real embrace. I hugged him back, but I did not cry. I was done crying over things I could not control. All I could do was move forward one step at a time. On the drive home, I felt something I had not felt in a long time. Peace. Not the peace of having everything resolved. Things were far from resolved. But the peace of knowing I had stayed true to myself. I had not sacrificed my dignity for anyone, not even my own child. And that was worth more than any apology could ever give me. 1 year after I walked out of Derek's apartment with my suitcase, Christmas arrived again. My house was decorated simply. A small tree in the corner, some lights in the windows, Frank's favorite ornaments hanging on the branches. I did not need much. The beauty was in the meaning, not the excess. I had plans to spend the day with Rosa and her family. They had invited me to their celebration, a loud and joyful gathering with too much food and too many people and laughter that filled every room. I was looking forward to it. Then the phone rang. It was Derek. "Mom," he said. His voice was hesitant. Kristen went to her parents' place for the holidays. "I was wondering if maybe I could come see you today." I paused. "Are you sure?" "Yes." He sounded certain. "I want to spend Christmas with you, if you will have me." I smiled, a real smile, the kind that comes from somewhere deep inside. "I will always have you," I said. "Come whenever you are ready." He arrived in the early afternoon. He brought a pie from the bakery Frank used to love. He remembered. We sat in the living room, the tree lights twinkling softly. He helped me cook dinner, something he had not done since he was a teenager. We talked about safe things at first. His work, my painting, the garden Rosa and I had planted. Then, as the evening grew quiet, he said something that surprised me. "I have been thinking a lot about Dad." I looked at him. "About how he treated you," Derek continued. "How he always put you first. How he made sure you knew you were loved every single day." He paused. I want to be more like him. My eyes stung, but I did not let the tears fall. "Your father would be proud of you for saying that," I said. "And so am I." He reached over and took my hand. The same hand I had used to wipe his tears when he was small. The same hand I had used to pack his lunches for school. The same hand that had almost let go of hope. "I love you, Mom," he said. "I know I have not shown it, but I do." I know I said, "I love you too. I always have." We sat there in the glow of the Christmas lights, mother and son finally starting to find our way back to each other. Things were not perfect. There was still a long road ahead. Kristen was still in the picture, though I heard less about her demands now. Derek was still learning how to stand up for himself. Our relationship was still fragile, still healing. But it was real. And real was enough. After he left that evening, I sat in Frank's chair and looked at the painting I had made. The rolling hills, the summer sky, the promise of something beautiful beyond the horizon. I thought about everything I had been through. The loss of Frank, the slow loss of Derek, the humiliation, the ultimatum the night I walked out with my suitcase. And I realized something. That suitcase did not carry my surrender. It carried my freedom. It carried my affection to be diminished. It carried my choice to be more than what others wanted to make of me. I did not leave because I stopped loving my son. I left because I loved myself enough to demand respect. And in the end, that love brought him back to me. Not on their terms, on mine. That is the lesson I want to share with you today. When someone gives you two impossible choices, remember that there is always a third option. You can create your own path. You can refuse to play by rules designed to diminish you. You deserve love that does not come with conditions that strip away your dignity. You deserve relationships that honor who you are, not what you can do for others. If my story resonates with you, I would love to hear from you. Have you ever had to choose between your dignity and someone you loved? What did you do? Share your story in the comments below. And if this story touched your heart, please hit that like button. Subscribe so you do not miss more stories like this one. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it today. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And remember, no matter what ultimatums life gives you, you always have the power to choose yourself. I wish you strength. I wish you peace. And I wish you the courage to grab your own suitcase when the time comes. Take care of yourselves.